And we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Unfiltered Report. My name is Ryan. Here we are. What a day we had to start off the weekend. Uh Match day two. Well, not match day two. I misspoke. Day two of the World Cup. Match day one, day two of the World Cup in the books. Day one of the College World Series in the books. Day two of the College World Series tomorrow. We've got a full slate of World Cup matches for day number three. We've got the NBA Finals, a full baseball slate. So we had mentioned that, with the World Cup, we were going to do our best to come in and we were going to go every night, every day, talk about everything. And what I wanted to do today, something we've done many times before, but, my hope is that throughout the summer, continuing to set the tone for the rest of, not only the present but the future, is that we kind of go, each day we'll go kind of all over the place with some of the, especially as we do more of these, then it'll allow us the opportunity to really, go have more day-to-day stuff. And then, again, we keep edging this Brendan Sorsby conversation as well. But I promise you the wait will be worthwhile. Each day there's more information that gets added to it. And at least from my perspective, I would really like to do that episode justice. So I hope that the people out there that listen to it will, we'll see I don't know how it'll receive. I guess if it doesn't receive well, what can I do about it? But, at least on my end, it's something that I think it's a very fascinating conversation because I think it connects to so many other different things. So stay tuned for that, please. I know, keep edging that, but it's not intentional. It's just one of those things that, I want to really do that properly, not only just for that conversation, but because I want to use that to springboard into other discussions within that particular episode that will then set up future episodes and conversations. Um, so, I apologize for the delay on that. We still haven't even, recapped the NBA draft combine. The NBA draft's about, what is it, like almost less than 10 days away, give or take, which is hard to believe. But for this particular episode, what we want to do, we want to recap day two of the World Cup, setting the stage for day three. In addition, would like to recap day one of the College World Series. Maybe touch on a couple of points throughout the sporting world as well. And then, just things to look forward to, maintenance stuff, as far as the Unfiltered Report goes, moving forward throughout the summer, things for the people to look out for. So, without further ado, what we're going to do, we're going to start with the World Cup first. Again, day two in the books. Day one, shout out to my guy D. We went in, we recapped day one. We talked about the Mexico South Africa match. We also talked about Korea and Czechia. I would like to go in and make a slight correction from what I said about the Korea Czechia match. I know I'd gone in there and said that, there, it didn't feel like there was, in the Mexico South Africa match. I'm not sure that there was a single South African supporter in the entire stadium, and if there was, I mean, you couldn't hear them. You couldn't even notice in the sea of Mexican green jerseys. Um, and on the subject of Mexico, South Africa, a huge shout out goes to the watch party that they had at the Coliseum. And I watched a couple clips of that watch party at the Coliseum that they had for the Mexico match, and then, not to get ahead of ourselves, but for the USA match today. Shout out to all these watch parties. We hope to be reporting to you live from one of these watch parties in due time. So please stay tuned for that. Knock on wood, we'll be able to make that happen for you in short order. And hopefully, throughout the tournament, we'll have all kinds of exciting, World Cup coverage and, again, other sports. But I did mention this Korea Czechia match. I said, hey, I don't know if there was a single Czechia supporter. After we did that recording, I think ironically, I want to say in between that and the College World Series preview with the college baseball regionals and super regionals recap that we did last night. I was watching a little bit of the replay of Korea Czechia again, and I guess sometimes things slip through the cracks the first time, and there were more Czechia fans than I realized. Granted, there weren't that many, especially comparatively. There were a lot more Korean supporters, and there were a lot of Mexican supporters who were just there, I think, to enjoy a good match in Guadalajara. And there were a lot of empty seats, which is going to be a conversation that we're going to add more data points to throughout the tournament of matches with sold out stadiums, the atmospheres, matches where maybe there isn't as much of an attendance, but the atmosphere is great, and then matches where, hopefully it's not the case, but there might be some matches that the atmosphere is really non-existent, and there are a lot of empty seats on top of that. So we're going to continue to, go day by day, recap each day, look ahead to the next, which all sets the stage for this, um, with this Canada Bosnia Herzegovina match in Toronto, the Group B opener. Um, we had mentioned last night at the Estadio Azteca, it was sold out. Maybe not as loud as the Azteca typically is, of course, for any other match. I think you could definitely tell that the price point had a little bit of a factor in that atmosphere. But like we mentioned, with the caveat with the Azteca specifically, is that the Azteca at its worst day is still a lot more intimidating than a lot of other atmospheres. And I think that rang true in comparison with this Canada Bosnia Herzegovina matchup. Um, Now, what was interesting to me, atmosphere wise, was obviously there was a lot of Canadian supporters. But you know what? Shout out to Bosnia. I guess I had no idea, to be honest with you. You learn a lot through the World Cup. Um, I guess there is a pretty sizable Bosnian population in Toronto or in Canada. I'm sure some of them, traveled from overseas as well. But there was a solid contingent of Bosnia supporters, definitely. And again, not to get ahead of ourselves, but out of the three host nations matches, I felt that Bosnia had the best away support, and I felt that the Canadian atmosphere was the least rowdy and intimidating of the three. I'll be interested to see if that remains to be the case throughout the tournament. But I felt for a large majority of that match, it was, there were some empty seats, but it was a relatively sold out crowd. Especially in comparison to Korea and Czechia last night. And obviously there were a lot of Canadian supporters, but I think atmosphere wise, we mentioned last night, Toronto has one of the most passionate fan bases in North America. I think outside of Mexico, I think Toronto and really Canada as a whole really makes a claim. I think when it comes to the United States, we're going to continue. There's an unbelievable amount of New York Knicks propaganda going out there these days, and look, um, I think that atmosphere, sure, is solid, but I think I would take the Estadio Azteca in a heartbeat. I would, and in many ways, I think, compared to even, Madison Square Gardens get a lot of propaganda. I don't know if we've ever shared this or not on a recording, but part of the reason why I have a soft spot for the Toronto Raptors is if you go back 12 years ago to 2014, ironically, about 2 months before the 2014 World Cup. I'll take you to April 2014. It was the first day of the NBA playoffs. The first game of that NBA playoffs was the Toronto Raptors against the Brooklyn Nets. For those of you who don't, and if you'll recall, that was the Brooklyn Nets team that had traded for Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and company They had, ISO Joe Johnson and all these guys. And then, this was Toronto's first time back in the playoffs in a long time. Uh, you know, uh, y- y- there were rumors earlier in that season with Toronto where, they had traded Rudy Gay, and there were a lot of rumblings that they were going to trade Kyle Lowry and really tear the team down and start from scratch. If you go back and you listen in hindsight many years later, and you listen to Kyle Lowry and other guys on that team, like my guy DeMar DeRozan, they both kind of say that that was a turning point when they traded Rudy Gay, and there were all these things flowing around, and they basically banded together and said, "Look, like, if we're going to stick around as a group together, this is our only shot." And so Toronto went on a little bit of a run in the regular season, ended up being able to host game one of that opening round series. And that was the first game of the NBA playoffs that year. I remember being a sophomore in high school at the time. It was an interesting time in my life, which is not relevant to this discussion, maybe a little bit, but, such a long time ago. That, the more important thing from that time period was the sporting element of it than anything else, which, we always talk about how sports is a safe space and a safe haven, and it's a place to kind of escape from day to day things that are going on at any point in your life. And it's also something that you can go back in time and you can pinpoint not only where you were when you were enjoying something like that, but maybe where your life was as a whole at that point. So with the Toronto Raptors, I'll never forget. Again, first day of the NBA playoffs is a Saturday morning, sophomore in high school. Um, I remember I got out of bed that day. I woke up, and I think I woke up maybe it might have. I honestly think it was about a minute before tip off, and I just jumped out of bed, went downstairs, turned on the TV, and just the way that the universe kind of had it synced up that day. Maybe in the simulation of life. That would have, 100 times in a simulation, maybe 99 times out of 100, it would have played out that way. Maybe I would have been asleep. Maybe I would have woken up a little bit later and tuned in a little bit later into the game. Who knows? But the way that it worked out was I woke up at the perfect time. So when I turned on the TV was right before tip off. And to this day, I can remember the noise that came from the TV screen and what it did to my brain, um, and just the atmosphere, especially comparative to NBA atmospheres, which even as a kid, this has been a drum I've been paying for a long time. There've been a lot of things that have changed in my own life from then to now. I'm not even close to the same individual in many ways. But one thing that hasn't changed is that, or I've always been passionate about, atmospheres and the quote unquote underdogs and the ones that don't get the media love and the media attention. And Toronto was no different. Again, getting the first match that early in the morning, um, and obviously all the attention being on Brooklyn. Uh, at that point in time, obviously, I was aware of the Raptors. I knew of I was following the team throughout the year, but I wouldn't say that I had a soft spot at that point. But turning on the TV at the timing that I did, it's like I don't even have to close my eyes. And I remember exactly what the screen looked like with the ESPN graphics that they had at the time 12 years ago. And they had the starting lineups up right as I turned the TV on, and you could hear the noise in the crowd. And to this day, I still think it was the loudest pregame, about to be, tipping off. It was the loudest I've ever heard an NBA arena. At least that's how my brain interpreted it and still remembers it to this day. And it did something in the combustion of my brain that from that second, I mean, I was hook, lined, and sinkered. Hook. What's the saying? Hook, line, and sinker. I was hook, lined, and sinkered right off the bat. And from that moment on, it sparked this 12. Again, like with DeRozan, I mean, here we are 12 years later, and I watched the obscene amount of Kings games. Um, But yeah, I just remember that game one in Toronto. They had Jurassic Park outside. When the Maple Leafs are playing, they call it Maple Leaf Square as well. Again, everybody keeps giving all this Knicks propaganda about the Knicks watch parties. I mean, that Toronto Raptors watch party outside was one of the coolest things I've ever seen, even to this day. And that particular 2014 run, especially those 7 games that they played against Brooklyn. I mean, we could do a whole episode about that. Um, from again, just turning on the TV, the way that it happened, the crowd noise sucked. I mean, that they sucked me in, and I mean, I was from 2014. Even to this day, I still have a soft spot for the Raptors, but I mean, maybe not the same because I think that team, especially the years that they had, DeMar and Kyle Lowry, and everybody's favorite player in America apparently nowadays, OG Anunoby. The people forget how good those Raptors teams were, and everybody likes to call them LeBronto, even if we're fast forwarding a couple years later. I mean, those were some really good basketball teams even before Kawhi Leonard came in and they won a championship. I mean, you run down the list. I mean, forget DeRozan, forget Kyle Lowry, and you had Fred VanVleet, Norman Powell, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, Jakob Poeltl. I mean, you go down the list, but that 2014 Raptors team will always hold a special place in my heart. Um, even in 2015, 2016, 17, all those teams, before, even, always will hold a special place in my heart, but not to get off topic, but my point is that, we came in here last night, we talked about that game 5, Blue Jays and Rangers, ALDS, and even before the Bautista bat flip, I mean, that was one of the best atmospheres. Um, and then, if people remember the wild card game that they played, I think it was a year or two later against the Orioles, when they walked it off, um, with the Edwin Encarnacion shot, if my memory serves correctly. Toronto has always had an amazing atmosphere, and I'm sure ticket prices have always been relatively expensive. I'd have to go back and see how much they were back in 2014, but you know, my point is that atmosphere in Toronto today, I don't think was up to par with what I've seen with Toronto sports in the past, and I would, we would be remiss if we didn't mention that maybe at least a decent factor in that. Now, part of it could be the fact that it was a 3 p.m. in the afternoon match, um, in the sun out there in Toronto, but for the majority of that match, especially, before we get into the actual match itself, I mean, probably for a good 70 something minutes, it was relatively tame compared to what, you would have expected from a Toronto crowd where, that like that city really could get loud. It wasn't as loud as it could have been, I felt. Um, and again, I want to give credit to the Bosnia supporters. They had a huge chunk of Bosnia supporters behind the goal, up top on the upper deck, especially. They had a couple behind goal in the lower deck as well, but they had a huge traveling contingent. Whenever the camera would pan up, that way you could see them. And for a large majority of the match, I mean, they might have been outnumbered, but they were making just as much, if not more, noise than the Canadian supporters in Toronto earlier in the day, or I guess yesterday, because it's 3:31 a.m. here on the West Coast. Um, but I felt that atmosphere could have been a lot more raucous for 90 minutes than it was. There was a lot of like "Let's go Canada" chants, which I thought always gave me a little bit of a chuckle because I think that's always what I like to compare with North American sports to international football, especially. Where they're singing and chanting for 90 minutes, and you can hear the pageantry and the songs, uh, and just constant noise. Um, I didn't experience that one bit throughout the match, really, to the level that I would have maybe. I mean, I guess I'm not too surprised, but definitely a caveat. I mean, I've always said that the closest to international football that we have here in the United States specifically is college sports, college football, college basketball, college baseball, so on and so forth. I think college sports is the closest to that, where you really get that fervent support, and whether it's storming the field, storming the court. We spent a lot of West Virginia propaganda last night, which we'll get to them in a little bit. I think atmosphere is a huge part of the sporting experience, whether you're sitting down on your couch watching it from home, whether you're watching it without any audio, but you're in a group of people. That's part of the atmosphere of sport as well. Don't let's make that caveat distinction as well. Or whether you're in the stadium, atmosphere is a huge component of what makes sports what it is. Where you can feel the love, you can feel the passion, um, and so going to the on the pitch stuff. I think this match in many ways. I think when according to script. I think it was a much more entertaining version of a similar script to Czechia and Korea. I always like to say sports is not entertainment. It's unfortunate that somewhere in the lexicon, Rubicon, whatever the hell the saying is, that sports and entertainment are lumped together. I've always been of the opinion that sports is not supposed to be entertainment. It's never been meant to be. It isn't, it shouldn't be. Sports is about, again, not only bringing people together, but it's about competition. You're not trying to entertain people. You're trying to get a result. You're trying to win. You're trying to keep yourself alive in a tournament, whatever it may be. There's, sometimes, there's, I always like to say, I don't care if it's entertaining. I'm not looking to be entertained. If I wanted to be entertained, I would do something else. I think, if a sporting event, whatever sport it is, happens to be entertaining, obviously that's different, but it was never meant to be entertainment. And I think that's a very important distinction that I would like to make personally. That's how I interpret it. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that would disagree. That's totally fine. Um, but as far as the on the pitch stuff, like I mentioned, last night with Czechia and Korea, Czechia went out to a 1-0 lead, and they played exactly how you would expect. In Korea were on the front foot, and there was that stylistic contrast. Korea ended up getting 2 goals in the span of about 13 minutes, and they ended up getting the 3 points, winning 2-1. We came in here last night, and we gave a lot of love to Bosnia. And look, shout out and credit to Bosnia. They followed a similar script to what Czechia did yesterday, although I think they did it probably. And I mean, it was a very similar script. It was set pieces, tactical fouls, 10 behind the ball, defending their ass off. Bosnia ends up getting an relatively early goal, scoring in the 21st minute. I apologize if I butcher his first name, but Mr. Lukic, Hovo Lukic scores in the 21st minute. Bosnia goes up 1-0. Even before that, you could feel that Bosnia were settling into the match pretty well. First 20 minutes of the match, Canada obviously was more on the ball, and Canada definitely had again more possession. They had more chances. They had more touches in the final third. Bosnia were very intent on sticking to what got them there. They were either going to win this match 1-0 or they were going to draw it 1-1. That was what they were intent to do. That's what Czechia wanted to do last night. They couldn't do it. They lost 2-1. But Bosnia followed a very similar script and just executed it in a way that they went out. They got the 1-0 lead. Canada in the first half, they had more of the ball. They had a couple of chances, but it felt like Bosnia kind of had them suffocated a little bit, frustrated them a little bit. The crowd wasn't really getting into it as much as they probably wanted to. And the Bosnian supporters were doing their thing, and it head into halftime. It was 1-0 Bosnia. Canada didn't look too great in the first half. You're thinking, hey, you know what? Bosnia's got a real shot to get the 3 points here. Obviously 45 minutes to go. You think at the very least they're going to get a point out of this if they're able to, you know, do what they wanted to do, and they were going to just play 10 behind a ball and hang on for dear life. Jesse Marsh in the second half made a couple of early substitutions. Uh, I thought what really changed the match, in my opinion, was when Ali Ahmed came in, the Norwich City man. When he came in, I felt like he came in and instantly made an impact. Even though he didn't necessarily have a goal or an assist in this match, I thought when he was on the pitch, I think I could make the argument to you that he was the best player on the pitch. Um, and I thought he really came in there and really gave them a shot in the arm, really gave him some juice. They ended up subbing out Jonathan David as well. They made three substitutions at the same time in the 61st minute. The other David on the team, they put him in. Um, they put him up top. Promised David, the Union St. Gilloise forward. He did pretty well too. Um, and then I thought this Miller guy, not to be mistaken with Kevin Millar, similar spelling. I thought he maybe didn't have the best the first half. So they took him out as well, and they put in our guy Mr. Schaffelberg, Jacob Schaffelberg, LAFC man. So they made these three substitutions in the 61st minute. I felt like in the second half, even within the first couple minutes of the second half, even before they made these substitutions, Canada, I think they made a couple of tweaks. Um, they had a couple of chances in the first half. Obviously, they couldn't convert. But I thought in the second half they came out much better, much sharper. Again, I thought once Ali Ahmed specifically came in the match, I thought he was really electric on the ball. Made some really exciting plays. Um, but Canada couldn't get couldn't get their breakthrough goal to level it up 1-1. Bosnia were doing everything they could to hold on to their 1-0 lead. I think it's going to be a similar theme throughout this tournament in different styles. We've had the Czechia and Bosnia way of doing it with these, big, tall, physical European sides, and then we're going to have some other sides later on where, they'll do it in similar and different ways. But we mentioned Kyle Aaron last night. He comes on in the 76th minute. The guy that he replaced, Mr. Oluwasi, Tony Oluwasi, apologies if I butchered his name, the Villarreal forward. I thought he did pretty well. He got the start up top. Obviously didn't have any goals or assists, but I thought he had a couple of good chances. Definitely wasn't a bad decision to start him, but bringing in Kyle Aaron in the 76th minute, and ironically, shortly after that, the commentary team of Darren Fletcher and Owen Hargraves, which I know we've got stars of the Unfiltered Report that would love to talk about Darren Fletcher and especially and that commentary duo and give them some love. Owen Hargraves was basically saying, hey, you know what? Like the way that Bosnia are defending right now, and all this is going to take a moment of magic for Canada to be able to put one in the back of the net. And almost as soon as the words came out of his mouth, Canada puts one in the back of the net. Kyle Aaron gets the goal, takes a wicked deflection off of the defender, levels it up 1-1. Canada had some really good chances beforehand. There was one particular chance. I apologize if I butchered this dude's name, but I know he's the captain for Bosnia. Said Kolasanek. I apologize if I butchered his name. I thought the center backs for Bosnia were incredible throughout the match. They were the MVPs of the match for Bosnia. In many ways, the Bosnian keeper didn't really have to deal with a whole lot because these guys felt like they were deflecting everything. And there was one particular deflection. For those of you who watched the match, if you haven't, you can go back and watch the highlights. It was a miracle that this didn't go in the back of the net where the aforementioned captain of Bosnia gets a last minute clearance before the ball's about to go in the back of the net. Ironically, the first goal yesterday for Korea was one where, it looked like the Czechia player might be able to, go in and clear it, but he kind of pulled back. I think he almost realized that it was too little, too late. But the Bosnian captain was able to get his foot on it, deflected it off of the crossbar. Um, you know, I really thought that Bosnia did everything that I expected them to do. They mucked it up. They made it ugly. They sat back and they defended, but then a wicked deflection where ironically Kyle Aaron was played onside by the aforementioned Bosnian captain, just barely. Um, but Canada levels it up 1-1. Um, Canada had some really great chances after that. They had a couple of great chances to make it 2-1. Um, After that Kyle Aaron goal was really the first time throughout that entire match where the Toronto atmosphere really kicked in the high gear a little bit, and then they started to get rocking a little bit, but it felt like for the first 70 some minutes, there wasn't as much juice in that atmosphere as they probably would have hoped. But after that goal, leveling up 1-1, at least for the last 12 minutes plus stoppage time, that atmosphere definitely, kicked in the high gear. Canada had a couple of chances, like we mentioned. Bosnia had a chance as well. They couldn't convert on that, but really Bosnia had far and few chances, just like Czechia last night. Once Bosnia got the one goal, especially, I mean, they had nothing going forward the rest of the match, really even before then too. Bosnia were totally content. I think that they'll be very happy, Bosnia, to go in and get a draw. I think if you were to ask Bosnia before the match, hey, you're gonna get a point out of this, I think they'd take it 10 times out of 10. They're gonna be a tough side to break down in these next two matches that they have. They've got Switzerland coming up next on June the 18th at 12 p.m. Pacific, and then Wednesday, June 24th, they've got Qatar. Um, Bosnia is going to be a tough side to break down. With these eight third place sides moving forward, we'll see where things shake up as this group continues to play out and how many points Bosnia are able to get out of this group. Again, they've got one. They're going to have to go for it against Qatar, most definitely, and try to get the 3 points. When I say go for it, they'll probably try to do exactly what they did with Canada, get a goal and hang on for dear life. I'll be interested to see how they play against the Swiss on match day 2. But they did exactly what was expected. They bunkered down. They made it physical, tactical fouls, um, a lot of deflections, 10 behind the ball. They did what was expected. I thought Canada, they had again large majority of the ball. They had a couple of good chances, but it also felt like a little disjointed in attack at times. Jesse Marsh made a couple of comments even before the match regarding the national anthem of Canada compared to the United States. Clint Dempsey of Fox got very mad about that. For those of you into that sort of thing, but all in all, I think Bosnia will be very happy to get a point. And I think all things considered, if you're Canada, considering how poor of a first half it was, especially, I think if you're Canada getting a point out of that, all things considered, I think Bosnia will be the happier of the two sides to get a point. But it's not. It would have been a lot worse for Canada had they not been able to get that point and they lost 1-0. It really would have put them behind the eight ball, not only in the group but in order to qualify. But that gives them a little bit of a lifeline for the rest of the group. Hopefully, Alfonso Davies is able to come back. Um, but I think Canada showed some, a couple of flashes. I'll be interested to see what they're able to do in match day 2. I think, if you're looking at, second and third and coming down to goal differential, I think that Qatar match day 2 for Canada is going to be big for them. They're going to really have to try and not only get 3 points, but maybe, beat them 2-3 goals, especially with Bosnia and Qatar looming match day 3. Um, that very well could be the difference between who finishes second and who finishes third, as well as what happens in the matches against Switzerland. Uh, I think Bosnia are going to do the exact same thing against Switzerland. They're gonna put 10 behind the ball and they're gonna hope for a draw. They're gonna hope for another draw, whether it's 1-1, 0-0, whatever it may be. Um, I would be shocked if Bosnia play any other way throughout the tournament, I fully expect them to play this way throughout the tournament. But I'll be interested to see what happens with Canada moving forward. Much better second half for them. But I'll also be interested to see what the atmospheres look like. Match day two for them against Qatar is going to be in Vancouver, and then match day three against the Swiss, they will be also in Vancouver. So I'll be interested to see if there's any contrast between the Vancouver atmospheres and the Toronto atmospheres, especially given that both of those are also going to be afternoon matches. So Canada gets no matches under the bright lights, if you will, which I think is unfortunate. But I guess that's just how the cookie crumbles. But all in all, I thought Bosnia will be very happy to get a draw. And I think, if you're Canada, maybe a little bit disappointed. But I think, at the same time, I think they'll be happy with a draw, given away that, could have easily been a lot worse. I think, having that ability to live and fight another day, it sets up tomorrow with the four matches. One of those, the first match of the day, 12 o'clock Pacific, will be Switzerland and Qatar. And ironically, that match is going to be in Northern California at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara. Home of the Niners. Shout out to our guy Malik. I love you, brother. Can't wait to see you soon. And Alele Blue for you, my brother. Um, but moving on. So that was the Group B opener, and then the Group D opener. The third and final host nation hosting their match. We'll get wow, words are difficult. We'll get Group C action tomorrow, sandwich in between the second Group B and Group D matches. We'll get the Group C, as the episode progresses, and then of course tomorrow. Um, but heading on to this USA Paraguay game, the Group D opener out in SoFi Stadium. We'll start again with the atmosphere. I will be honest. I was not sure what to expect with the atmosphere. I wasn't sure, if there would be empty seats or not, how loud it would be. But credit to the people that filled up SoFi Stadium. Definitely. That place was filled up. They did their part. It was it the loudest atmosphere in the history of humanity? No, but it was a loud atmosphere. Really, I think set the tone for the USA. Um, the Stars and Stripes, USA baby. They go in, and I'll be honest. Before this match, I thought that Paraguay were going to give them a little bit of a battle. I thought they would make it tough on the United States. I thought it would be maybe like a 2-1 sort of affair, 1-0 maybe even. But no, I thought it would be a little bit of a tight affair. I thought Paraguay would really be able to come in and compete. This is a Paraguay side that in qualifying beat both Argentina and Brazil not too long ago. We mentioned Julio Enciso not only last night, but with the aforementioned Alele Blue star of the tournament, our guy Malik. We mentioned that Julio Enciso suffered an injury not too long before the World Cup and maybe put his tournament appearances in jeopardy. Turns out that not only was he fit to play, he ended up starting the match. So credit to him for that. He actually played the entire full match as well. So credit where it's due to him. But much like Mexico and South Africa yesterday, where early on in the match, Ronwen Williams, the keeper, instead of booting it long, decides to play it short. The defender playing it from the back, it's maybe again bad pass, unable to really get a proper footing on it. And next thing you know, Julian Quinones puts the ball in the back of the net, and it's 1-0. And that match was done and dusted before it even started. Something fairly similar happened in this United States Paraguay match. But in this case, it was an own goal by Damian Bobadilla in the 7th minute. And the match was pretty much done and dusted after that. And I got to be honest, we came in here and said that South Africa were very disappointing yesterday. And if we go back to Bosnia and Canada, through 4 matches in the tournament, Bosnia and Canada by far was the best match of the tournament. I give credit where it's due. The atmosphere wasn't terrible. Like I mentioned, it might not have been the loudest, but it was a good atmosphere. The Bosnian supporters traveled. There's a lot of Canadian red out there. I know I won't be only person to say this, but Darren Fletcher and Owen Hargraves to me are a great duo that were at the Euros a couple years ago, and I was happy to see that Fox decided to bring those guys back for this rendition of the tournament. I think those two guys have a great partnership, and I wish I could hear them call more matches together than what they'll have scheduled. Those guys make any match entertaining. Those are not my words. That's one of the stars of the Unfiltered Report. I hope we get on here soon. Those guys did a great job, both of them. They really made that match a fun listen as well. So I give credit where it's due to both of those guys, Darren Fletcher and Owen Hargreaves, for that. But yeah, I thought that was easily the best of the 4 matches so far. And then going back to the USA Paraguay comparison to Mexico and South Africa. With Mexico, Mexico seemed very content to ride that match out. When they weren't going to really break out of their conservative-ish play style. They got a second goal with Raul Jimenez, but they didn't really need much more else than that. 2-0 was all they really wanted. You could tell in the way that they were playing. And again, disappointed in South Africa. Credit to Mexico, but the United States, look, credit where it's due. I know Alexi Lawless went in at halftime and said that that was the best half in the history of the United States men's national team. You can go in and make your own conclusions on that. But look, I'll give credit where it's due. They were honestly, that was really the best that I've seen this group of players look at any point. Credit to Pochettino. I think there wasn't really any controversy in the side. I think, the starting 11 was exactly as we expected. Um, some of the bigger tactical decisions that we kind of talked about last night was number one was going to be, well, there were three. It was going to be who's going to be in goal, who's going to be up top, and then there was the other part where it was going to be Pochettino's decision to play Serginho Dest in more of an advanced role higher up the pitch. And I think all three of those went as perfectly as you could have imagined. I thought Serginho Dest was the best player on the pitch throughout the match. And then we mentioned who was going to get the start up top. Flo Balogun, a guy I've enjoyed watching for many years, someone who was born in New York, moved to England at a young age, of Nigerian descent. It's been widely reported that when he was deciding which of those three nations to play for, there were a lot of people online that really advocated for him to play for the United States, and that was one of the big reasons why he decided to play for the United States. This is a guy I've enjoyed watching in club football, um, and I know some of the maybe some of the discourse was maybe, hey, should Ricardo Pepi get the start? But you know what? Credit to Flo Balogun, 2 goals. He had a third that got waved off for offsides. Probably could have had another one. Even without that as well. But to get 2 goals, the early leader for the Golden Boot with 2 goals so far. Only 4 matches in, of course. But you couldn't have asked for a better dream start for him. Um, the big concern, obviously, I know, Fox Sports almost collapsed. Was Pulisic getting subbed out at halftime? To be honest with you, I think he'll be fine. I mean, we'll see, but I'm sure part of that in Pochettino's reasoning will be that the match was done and dusted at halftime. It was 3-0 at halftime. Again, Flo Balogun scored in the 31st minute and the 5th minute of stoppage time in the first half. So they went up 3-0. And, if we were disappointed in South Africa, I expected more out of Paraguay than I did out of South Africa. And I think as a result, I would say through 4 matches, Paraguay are absolutely, without a hesitation, the most disappointing side so far out of the 8 countries that have played. Uh, the first half went about as poorly as you could have possibly imagined for any side to have. I mean, it felt like they couldn't even string together 1 or 2 passes in succession. Um, it felt like they were on the, they were constantly under siege the entire, first half, especially. In many ways, the United States could have probably had 5 or 6 in the first half. 3-3 might have been generous for Paraguay, to be honest with you. It could have easily been a lot worse. Um, but I thought Pochettino, really, there were no surprises with the squad, but I think, they really, they look great, all things considered. They really did look great. There really wasn't much for Matt Freese to really do in goal either. So, I mean, I guess that conversation will kind of wait a day, but I thought he was fine. Paraguay did get one back in the second half. Mauricio scored in the 73rd minute, but then in the 8th minute of stoppage time, I know D mentioned Gio Reyna last night, and again, shout out to Big Nate. Gio Reyna comes on late in the match. He came on in the 82nd minute, and for him to score in the 8th minute of stoppage time, um, pretty much the last kick of the match, to get that +3 goal differential back after Mauricio had scored one in the 73rd minute. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better start for the United States. They were far and away the better side. I think we're gonna have to see how these next 2 matches go, and if they're, momentum is the biggest thing in sports, and I mean, you couldn't ask for a bigger momentum shift than that. I want to again, we're gonna talk about, we talk about atmosphere, we talk about on the pitch, off the pitch, the coverage. There were a couple of things that caught my eye with the coverage. On the subject of momentum, it was the first time in my life I've ever seen a momentum graphic in my life. I have no idea how they quantified that. Maybe some Lenovo AI referee cam computed bullshit that they did. I don't know how you. I think momentum is one of the few things in you can't quantify it. You can feel it, and you know when it's coming, but it's not something that I think can be measured in statistic, and in a graph or a graphic. So I thought that was interesting. The other broadcasting thing that I thought was really interesting, John Strong is still holding on the call. I'm not gonna say a whole lot on that. I'll save that for other people to come in and have that conversation. But the one thing that really stood out to me is going to be a theme throughout the tournament with these powered by Powerade hydration breaks, which again, let's just call it what it is. They're TV timeouts, they're media timeouts, and John Strong in many ways said the quiet part out loud twice within the span of a couple minutes. Um, at first, before Flo Balogun had even scored his first goal or his second, it was a couple minutes before this media timeout, if you will, and John Strong made the distinction that, hey, all of these matches are going to have hydration breaks. This particular match does not need one. It was a beautiful night in Southern California. Inglewood, great weather. Definitely did not need a hydration break. John Strong said as much. But he went and said that these are mandated. There is no choice in that sense. But then the part that really caught my eye was when that commercial break, if you will, rolled around. John Strong made a mention of the fact that, and he said end of the first quarter, and that was definitely something that, not surprising necessarily, but incredibly jarring to hear that. It was something that I was afraid was going to happen before the tournament, where it's just gonna, it's just like again with the ticket prices. Once you get a sold out SoFi Stadium with those ticket prices, the ticket prices are never going to come back down unless people push back. And I thought very similar with these commercial breaks, which again, let's just call it what they are. They're commercial breaks, they're media timeouts. And John Strong took it a step further and said the quiet part out loud and said it was the end of the first quarter. Football has always been a match of two halves with no timeouts and no commercial breaks. And this World Cup is the beginning of four quarters and commercial breaks. And John Strong said the quiet part out. But you know what? All things aside, I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions on John Strong and Stu Holden, but we'll save that for another day. I give them credit. They're living the dream. They're calling a World Cup in the United States. So tip of the cap to those two guys for living out a lifelong dream like that. And being able to do that. I'm not going to hate on that, at least, not tonight. So I give, all in all, this was a controversy-free match. Again, very disappointed in Paraguay. They were really, I mean, you could say they were better in the second half, but better really doesn't really mean much. I mean, they were honestly pathetic in both halves. I expected a lot more out of them than what they showed. And again, we mentioned momentum goes both ways. That's the type of deflating opening match that could really derail your tournament. And now, if you're Paraguay, you got to play Turkey uh, next Friday on the 19th at 8 p.m. Uh, that's a tough ask in Santa Clara. They're already behind the eight ball. Again with these eight top third place sides being three goals down in goal differential. Very easily could have been worse, but three goals definitely puts them further behind the eight ball than I think they would have hoped and imagined. Again, I admit when I'm wrong. I expected the United States to get the 3 points, but I would be lying if I said I expected the United States to dominate them in the fashion that they did. But the United States were the better side. I thought not only by a little, by a substantial margin. They were constantly on the front foot. They were creating chances. I thought everybody played well, to be honest with you. Go down the list. I don't think anybody had a bad game for the United States, even the substitutes. Um, Sebastian Berhalter made his debut. Ricardo Pepi came on later for Flo Balogun. He had two really good chances. Ricardo Pepi easily could have had one or two goals. Hit one directly to the keeper for his first chance, and then fluffed his lines a little bit on the second chance. But I think Ricardo Pepi is going to be an important player in this tournament, especially if he's coming off the bench. I would not be surprised if Ricardo Pepi finds himself on the score sheet sooner than later, even if he's not starting. We mentioned Gio Reyna earlier. It was great to see him. Again, we mentioned momentum. This is a guy who really has lacked momentum for such a long time, and you have to imagine that a goal like that could do wonders for his confidence. And even if he's not starting, he'll be a key rotational player. Tyler Adams with the yellow card, but other than that, he was spectacular. Weston McKennie was rock solid. Chris Richards, it was great to see him healthy. He's a really exciting talent. Alex Freeman, the youngest player on the side, the 21-year-old, I thought was really great. Anthony Robinson was rock solid as always. Malik Tillman did his thing. It was good to see Tim Weah. This is a guy, Tim Weah, who scored the first goal at the previous World Cup. Maybe falling out of the starting 11, but still going to be a key contributor. I know the media is going to focus a lot on Pulisic and that injury to his calf. But again, I think if you're Pochettino, it's a brilliant decision to take him out before the second half even starts. No need to risk it. You're up 3-0. You hope he's able to play against Australia. He seemed pretty confident about it. But as we'll continue to bang the drum, Pulisic might get all the headlines. But this team's a lot more than Pulisic. And definitely, I think it goes without saying, the most talented United States team that they've had, and this quote unquote younger generation that we've been anticipating here in the States for a long time. Like, This is the moment for them that they've been building for, and we'll see how much they can carry this opening match momentum into next Friday against Australia. That match is going to be in Seattle before they come back out here to SoFi out in Inglewood for match day three against Turkey. Um, that Australia match with Australia, Turkey tomorrow night and a little Pac-12 after dark action. I can't wait for that. Um, I hope that Australia are able to put up a better fight than Paraguay did tonight, or last night, I guess, depending on how you want to look at it, depending on how you look at, how you interpret time and whatnot. Um, but I thought, all in all, Paraguay were very disappointing, and the United States. I thought Paraguay were the most disappointing, and by that same breath of token, I thought that the United States, out of the 8 countries that have played so far, were the most impressive. Um, so tip of the cap to the United States. I can't wait to see what happens in that Turkey Australia match tomorrow night and the other Group D opener, and see if Australia is able to put up a bigger fight. I would expect that they will, but at the same time, that's a really good Turkey side, and that match day 3 at SoFi. I mean, that's going to be a really great matchup, and that'll be for top of the group. I think if the United States are able to play like this, they're going to definitely have a chance. But Turkey is nothing to slouch at. They're a really good side as well. So I can't wait to see how they play with their young talent, Arda Güler, Kenan Yildiz. You go down the list. And then the Turkish supporters. We talk about club football and the passion. The Turkish league has some of my favorite fans, whether it's Galatasaray, Fenerbahce, Besiktas. You go down the list. I mean, these atmospheres. I would love to be at one of these matches one day. Lighting up flares and chanting in a language I don't even know and understand would be an amazing experience. And I hope one day we'll be able to make that happen live on the Unfiltered Report. Um, so it's going to be a great match to look forward to. But to look ahead to tomorrow's action, we mentioned that you're going to have Qatar and Switzerland at 12 o'clock, Levi Stadium in Santa Clara. At 3 p.m. is going to be the Group C opener, Brazil, Morocco. Easily on paper, the match of the day, and probably, without a doubt, the most anticipated matchup up until that point. Not to say the most anticipated matchup of match day one, but up until that point, I mean, those are two heavyweights going at it. Morocco semifinalists in the last World Cup, Brazil, Carlo Ancelotti. I can't wait to see what that looks like. And we talk about atmosphere. That's one I really am excited to see what that looks like in MetLife. And what that should be is that it should be packed to the brim, chanting and singing for 90 minutes and nonstop noise. I hope that's what it is. We'll see how it plays out. Only one way to find out, and you'll find out tomorrow night on our day 3 recap. But that's going to be a really great match. I can't wait to see what happens there. Then you've got the other Group C matchup between Haiti and Scotland. Call me crazy. I think I'm higher on Haiti than most people. I think, we mentioned Haiti. I think I could, I think that could be a fun atmosphere. Haiti and Scotland. There's been a lot publicized about the Scotland supporters out here on some of these state-run media as some of the, we like to say, we say that tongue in cheek as a joke, but like ESPN and whatnot. There's been a lot of love for the Scottish supporters, and rightfully so. They're a really passionate fan base. Some of the nicest people on the planet. But yeah, I'm excited. That's going to be in Foxborough. I'm excited to see what that atmosphere looks like. I think in an ideal World Cup atmosphere, I mean, that's filled to the brim, Scottish supporters and Haitian supporters, opposite ends of each goal, singing and chanting and dancing for 90 minutes as well. We'll see how that plays out atmospheric wise. And, I think Haiti, again, like I mentioned, I think maybe higher on them than most. I'm not suggesting they're going to make it out of the group or anything like that, but I think they'll play prideful. But that's a big match for Scotland. Scotland's going to need the 3 points. Either of those squads really got to go for it, especially being in a group with Brazil and Morocco. You got to be looking at that thinking if either of those teams are going to have any chance of qualifying, they're going to need 3 points in that opening match tomorrow. And they're going to need some pretty solid goal differential as well in their favor against Brazil and Morocco. And then again, going back to Brazil, Morocco, I think, I could, in many ways, I could see that being a draw. Not to get ahead of ourselves, but I really could see that playing out to a draw. I think two really good sides, two sides that both of them could top the group, and I wouldn't be surprised. And two sides that can make a deep run into the quarterfinals, semifinals, and I wouldn't be surprised as well. Uh, so that's going to be a great match at 3 p.m. and then 6 p.m. at Foxborough. I'll be excited to see that. And then we mentioned Australia, Turkey. Um, Australia is a tough side. I hope they're able to put up a bigger fight against Turkey than Paraguay did against the United States. But I also think, I think Turkey is a good bet for the 3 points. I think the Swiss are a good bet for the 3 points. Conventional wisdom would say Scotland for the 3 points, but you never know. That could be. I guess we'll see. Could be. We'll see. I guess if they do get the 3 points, what the goal differential looks like, and maybe we come back here and Haiti gets the doors blown off of them 4-0. But I have a feeling that they're gonna play with a chip on their shoulder, and they might not win. But I don't expect them to lay down and roll over. I think they'll play with pride. And again, I'm interested to see these atmospheres more than anything, and I'll be interested to see that Qatar Switzerland atmosphere at Levi's in Santa Clara at 12 in the afternoon on a Saturday afternoon. Um, the concern would be a lot of empty seats. I hope not. The Swiss have a really passionate fan base. I know some of the people on the Unfiltered Report have some strong feelings against the Swiss, but I got a special place in my heart for Switzerland. Um, Beautiful country. I got some dearly loved people that live out there that mean the world to me. So in many ways, I have a soft spot for the Swiss, and I hope they're able to make a run in this tournament as well. Um, so I'm excited to see those matches. And then Sunday is going to be a full slate as well. We'll get to Sunday tomorrow night. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Um, but flipping things over real quick, we mentioned that we were going to do a uh, uh, College World Series recap. Um, we're gonna do that. We're actually gonna do that in a separate recording, real quick. It might not be as long, maybe as this one. Who knows? Maybe it will be. But actually, sometimes you never know what's gonna happen. Sometimes you wanna do them at the same time. Sometimes you don't. These are the inner musings of a degenerate at 4:16 in the morning. Not sure if we want to break this up into two parts, if we want to just keep it cracking. I guess the people that listen to this, depending on the decision I make, can tell me if they think I made the right decision or not. And you know what? The more I'm yammering and yapping, fuck it, we're gonna combine them. You know what? Um, but also maybe we're not. So we keep the people on their toes. Are we gonna end it? Is it not gonna end? Oh my god, what's gonna happen? But yeah, I think to keep this World Cup Day 2 recap, I think we'll let it speak for itself. I'm gonna come back right now, clock in for another one of these College World Series Day 1 recaps. So stay tuned for that. Let me know, people out there. Let me know, if you want, if you like these combined, if you want them separate. Honestly, I'll probably do a little bit of both. To be honest, I'm very tempted to keep going. By the way. Um, and just put it all in one recording. But for the sake of argument, for tonight at least, you know, the indecisiveness was going to kill me one day. Now you know what? I hope not anytime soon. Knock on wood. Um, but yeah, we're gonna go in real quick. I'm gonna recap the College World Series. Um, we'll do that in a separate recording. But then I guess I'll go in there and probably say the same thing I'm saying now and say, oh man, who knows? But For now, this has been the Unfiltered Report. Stay tuned. We're going to be right back in just a second. Both of them will probably get uploaded or in and around the same time here at the crack of dawn. And cheers to a great summer, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy all your action. Actually, I think it's a good thing because I got a baseball thing I'd like to touch in. That's not the College World Series. So stay tuned for that. It's been the Unfiltered Report. My name is Ryan. We'll be right back. Make sure you don't miss any of these episodes, especially with the stars of the Unfiltered Report that are going to be on very shortly throughout not only this weekend, the upcoming week, throughout the summer, and all the way past the summer, fall onwards. So cheers to the best to come. I love you all. Cheers.